Shocking encounter, single mom asks to share table but billionaire's condition transforms everything. The rain hammered against the window of Maplewood Cafe like an urgent message from the universe, but Sarah barely noticed. Her mind was a storm of its own, swirling with the relentless demands of her life as a single mother. With Lily's laughter echoing in her ears, she felt the weight of obligation surging like a tidal wave. 2 jobs barely kept them afloat, but the dream of nursing school flickered in the back of her mind like a candle in a power outage. Today, however, the dreariness mirrored her internal struggle, each drop resonating with her exhaustion. When she spotted the lone table occupied by a man immersed in his laptop, an idea ignited in her. "Mind if I share your table?" she asked, her voice trembling on the precipice of vulnerability. The words felt like a fragile expanse, teetering between desperation and dignity. He looked up. A billionaire, by the looks of it, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes locked. Surprised but intrigued by her courage, he agreed. "But only if you share your hopes and dreams," he stated, a smirk dancing on his lips. At that moment, Sarah felt her heart race and her breath constrict. Few truly cared about her ambitions, let alone a stranger of his caliber. She gathered her thoughts, fear mingling with excitement. Nursing school had always been the sun in her cloudy life, but every inch of her screamed that she'd never make it. "I want to be a nurse," she confessed, heart in her throat. "But bills pile up, and Lily, she needs me." Jack raised an eyebrow, skepticism flooding his expression. "What is stopping you then?" His words had an edge, as if he couldn't comprehend the walls she faced. She felt defensive, each pulse in her veins a reminder of the sacrifices in silence: late night scrubbing floors, early mornings balancing trays of breakfast, the lonely hours of fatigue feeding her small dreams. "Maybe you could quit one of your jobs?" Jack suggested, his voice smooth, almost condescending. "Focus on your education." The suggestion hung heavy in the air, electrifying yet suffocating. She grappled with it, the flicker of hope entwining with guilt. Abandon her responsibilities? How could she plunge into uncertainty and leave Lily behind? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With her heart pounding beneath the weight of the moment, she swallowed, the tension so thick it threatened to suffocate her. She accepted his challenge, driven by the desire for a better future but terrified of the looming consequences. But as their conversation deepened, he revealed his intentions, his patronizing view of sacrifice that hit her like a punch to the gut. His withdrawal of support sent panic coursing through her veins like ice. "Jack, you don't understand," she cried, a wave of anguish crashing over her. "I've sacrificed everything for my dreams." Her voice quivered as she confronted the privilege he wielded so carelessly, revealing layers of her soul she kept buried under layers of grit and determination. Standing against Jack and his misconceptions ignited a revolution within her, intertwining hope with burgeoning fear of losing everything. The rain softened outside, but inside, the storm brewed, a reckoning of ambition clashing against reality. She felt torn at the crossroads, questioning if she would retreat back into the shadows or step boldly into a future where dreams could take flight. And as Jack stared at her, the silence grew dense with unspoken questions, leaving not just Sarah but the reader gasping for resolution in the eye of the storm. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, her instincts on high alert as Jack remained silent, his expression a mixture of intrigue and incredulity. The brief moment stretched like an elastic band, taut and unforgiving. She waited, half expecting him to dismiss her, to retreat into his world of privilege and wealth that felt light years away from her gritty reality. But instead, he leaned forward, a flicker of interest igniting in his eyes as if her emotional outburst had peeled back layers of indifference and revealed something raw and authentic beneath. "What do you think you need to do to reach that dream?" he asked, his tone more curious than condescending now. Her mind raced. The thought of nursing school felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Did she dare to repeat her ambitions, perhaps even map out a plan? While complex calculations revealed harsh realities, Sarah understood that admitting her desires was a form of leverage, even in this precarious conversation. She hesitated, gathering her courage. "I need to find a way to stabilize our finances first." Stabilize? His brows knitted in what seemed to be genuine confusion. "You're only looking at what's right in front of you. What if you look just a bit further? What if those 2 jobs could be a stepping stone instead of an anchor?" The air around them felt charged, an electric current coursing through her veins, prompting her to introspect. Was she merely treading water? The fatigue echoing in her bones suggested yes. With a flicker of determination, she dared to contemplate breaking those chains. What if she closed her eyes and let herself imagine a future that diverged from the current? Breathe in, breathe out. She could articulate a different narrative. "I could create a part-time schedule that allows me to focus on courses," she began, her voice gaining strength as she verbalized her thoughts. "Online classes maybe? Flexible hours? That would free up time to study while still being there for Lily." Jack nodded, visibly impressed. "There you go. You're starting to strategize." His encouragement shimmered like sunlight breaking through clouds, yet beneath it lay the constant reminders of her reality. An unsettling pang gripped her as she envisioned the risks. The conversation progressed, Jack asking penetrating questions that forced her to dissect her life in ways she had never done before. Each response took on a life of its own, unfolding the complexities of her struggle, the resilience that burned in her chest. The conversation deepened, the café's ambience fading into a silent background as an unspoken bond developed between them, tethered by the shared exploration of her untapped potential. But as the clock crept closer to Lily's pick-up time, anxiety began to gnaw at her like a persistent itch. Would the freedom to pursue her dream leave her tethered solely to ideals, defeating the very essence that drove her? A shadow of uncertainty hung over her rationalizations. Would she ever be able to take the step away from safety into the potential chaos of new aspirations? The reality of their conversation suddenly felt fragile, precariously balanced. Jack seemed to sense her turmoil, thanks to the emotional honesty that had crept into the edges of their banter. "Sarah," he said softly, breaking through her spiraling thoughts, "sometimes the greatest risks lead to the most fulfilling rewards." The challenge in his eyes ignited something primal within her. It set off a spark of realization that she could either hide behind her responsibilities or embrace the unpredictable waves of ambition. As she took a deep breath, embracing possibilities rather than the limitations she had clung to for so long, Sarah felt an unexpected fear knot in her stomach. Off in the periphery, she realized their moment of connection could slip away, dissolved by practicality and the inertia of her life. She needed to decide now. Would she cling to her grounded reality or venture into an unknown future filled with both promise and peril? Jack leaned back, an air of expectation surrounding him, compelling Sarah to confront the path unfolding ahead. The question loomed larger than either of them could have anticipated, leaving her with the weight of uncertainty and the thrill of potential. "Are you ready to take that step?" His words rippled through her, bringing her to the precipice of decision, one that felt monumental yet possible all at once. This moment would define her choices. In the eye of the storm, a fresh wind began to whisper possibilities, urging her forward. But were the dreams buried within her worth the fight? As she wrestled with the answer, the café door swung open, the cool air rushing in, filling the room with uncertainty just as it filled her mind. In that instant, everything felt poised for transformation. Sarah knew the next conversation she would have with him could change everything and she had to make it count. The café buzzed with life as Sarah clung to her thoughts, the weight of Jack's question lingering over her like a storm cloud. The air pulsed with tension, she could feel the vibrations of possibility mingling with her familiar anxieties. Jack shifted slightly, his gaze steady, an anchor in the turbulent sea of her doubts. "You don't have to answer right away," he said, a surprising gentleness in his tone. "But I think you're capable of more than you believe." Sarah's breath caught, the sincerity in his voice chipping away at the armor she had built. What if he was right? What if those 2 jobs were just stepping stones, not shackles? A flicker of hope stirred within her, igniting the corners of her mind that had grown accustomed to darkness. Could she truly reshape her path? "You know," she began, unsure where the words were leading her, "I used to think of nursing school as a far-off dream. Just something to aspire to but never achieve." The internal conflict surged. Between working and taking care of Lily, where would I even find the time? Her voice trembled slightly, admitting her vulnerabilities felt terrifying. Jack leaned in, his expression earnest. "Time can be stretched. It's about prioritizing what's important. What if you took just 1 class? Just to dip your toes in?" His suggestion sent a rush of questions spiraling through her mind. Could she succeed? What if she failed? And would her dreams feel more like burdens than aspirations? But then another thought emerged, a subtle, sneaky realization whispering that perhaps this time, she wouldn't be doing it alone. Jack's words felt like a lifeline, but would allowing himself to support her weaken her resolve? "I guess I could explore part-time courses," she replied slowly, testing the idea like a child walking on ice. "Start with something small, online maybe." Jack smiled, as if she had just achieved a significant milestone. "There it is. You have agency, Sarah. You need to recognize it." A flicker of warmth surged in her chest at his encouragement, and the remnants of her hesitation began to melt away. Unbeknownst to her, this exchange was igniting a flame of ambition. Her ambitions were valid, worthy of pursuit. It was as if the air between them shifted, filled with an unspoken pact. As she allowed her mind to wander into the realm of possibility, she thought of her little girl, Lily, with her bright eyes and boundless energy. Wouldn't this be an example she could set? A demonstration of chasing dreams, even when they feel like distant stars? Soon, however, self-doubt clawed its way back in. But taking on school means more sacrifice, she mused, her brow furrowing. Lily seems to need me all the time. What if she resents me for chasing my dreams? Jack shook his head firmly. You can't pour from an empty cup, Sarah. Finding time for yourself will only empower you both. He sounded wise, almost prophetic. Sarah contemplated the notion, feeling its weight. Perhaps the only true anchor in her life had been her fear of failure. As she wrestled with the thoughts, she made a firm resolution. This was not merely about her needs, this was also about Lily learning resilience and the courage to strive for something beyond survival. What if she experienced not just success but also failure? What if she stumbled along the way? Could she brave the storms of disappointment if she ventured into the unknown? Jack, in his unwavering presence, served as both a catalyst and a reminder that the road toward her dream need not be walked in solitude. A surge of clarity washed over her as she committed to pursuing that first class, no matter what it required of her. In that moment, she felt unshackled, buoyed by a new determination. But as she prepared to voice her decision, a strange mixture of excitement and apprehension gripped her. Would she truly be able to step away from the security of familiar ground? Before she could solidify her thoughts into words, a sudden commotion erupted near the entrance of the cafe. A hushed tone swept through the crowd, and Sarah's eyes were drawn towards the source of the disturbance, a sharp-dressed man shouting, hands raised as though he demanded attention. Jack, Sarah whispered, her heart racing with renewed tension, what's happening? Jack's expression shifted, an alertness replacing his earlier calm, his attention drawn fully to the unfolding scene. The juxtaposition of her moment of resolution and the chaos now erupting around her sent a jolt through her. Suddenly, the air was thick with uncertainty, and the unwavering path she had begun to carve felt more fragile than ever. The time had come, not just to face her ambitions, but to confront the unexpected challenges swirling around her. What would this confrontation mean for her journey? Sarah's heart raced as the sharp-dressed man's voice echoed throughout the cafe, a relentless insistence that cut through her inner turmoil. The patrons turned their heads, their buzzing conversations now replaced by whispers and worried glances. She felt the weight of their eyes, each gaze a reminder of the uncertain steps she was about to take. What if this is all just a distraction? She wondered, a thread of anxiety weaving through her thoughts. But before she could lose herself in the spiraling doubts, she noticed Jack's posture stiffen, his eyes narrowing on the man like a hawk assessing its prey. The sudden shift in Jack's demeanor jolted her. It was as if the storm within her demanded an anchor. "Stay here," Jack murmured, standing abruptly. His voice was low but firm, filled with a protective urgency that sent a ripple of reassurance through her. He stepped towards the commotion, his determined stride matching the intensity of his gaze. Sarah's instinct told her to follow, to not be left in this chaotic sea on her own. She pushed herself up from the table, her legs feeling unsteady with the weight of her decision looming in the background, ripe and untainted. How had she let the turmoil of the external take hold of her internal resolve? As she walked towards the scene, the man continued to shout, his words lost in the commotion, but his demeanor screamed distress. People were darting glances toward the doorway, and Sarah could feel the tension escalate with every passing moment. Was this man a threat? Something told her that confronting this chaos was merely another challenge she had to face head-on. "Jack!" She heard herself call out, almost instinctively. The chaos melted around her as she focused solely on Jack, who turned for just a moment, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he resumed his steady advance. "Sarah!" The urgency in his voice was laced with a quiet warning. "Get back!" But she didn't want to be vulnerable. She didn't want to hide from conflict anymore, and the growing anticipation to step into her own power urged her forward. What if you're just stepping into the unknown? She thought, questioning herself. Deep down, she felt it the same fire from moments earlier when her dreams seemed to flicker brightly under the weight of his encouragement. The café's atmosphere shifted from curiosity to concern as whispers of alarm washed over the tables. Jack moved closer to the man, now visible enough to see each line etching worry onto his face. Sarah could feel the room holding its collective breath, and time seemed to freeze. Then, she saw it, a wrinkled piece of paper clutched tightly in the man's fist, a clear signal that whatever was occurring was significant, perhaps even life-altering. Adrenaline surged through her, and she found herself planted firmly in her decision. Suddenly, the fears she held felt far too small against the pressing urge to stand beside Jack, to confront whatever this was while taking the reins of her life. "Stay back!" Jack barked again, this time as a shield. But instead of retreating, her voice emerged strong and unwavering. "I'm coming with you." His head whipped around in disbelief. "You can't just." "I can," she interrupted, a determination surging. "If this is a moment of truth, I want to face it with you." The look Jack gave her was a perfect mix of respect and concern, but Sarah had chosen her position. This was her journey as much as his. It was time to rise, to meet the unknown with resilience. The chaotic energy around her was an unbalancing force, but she felt her own power ignite a blend of vulnerability and resolve. As she stepped closer, a voice inside her whispered that this confrontation was far more than external chaos. It mirrored the conflict she faced internally, her aspirations, her fears, and the burgeoning sense of agency she was finally beginning to grasp. In that moment, as the sharp-dressed man turned his gaze outward, seeking something profound, the atmosphere crackled with tension. Sarah felt the pulsing beat of her heart, resonating with Jack's stare. Would this be the point where she either falters or fights? Just then, the man's voice rang out once more, loud and clear. "I need someone to listen. It's about the job offer. There's been a change of plans." The cafe seemed to shrink around her as blood rushed to her ears. The stakes were raised, and the urgency of the moment pressed against her. Her journey had suddenly morphed into something larger than personal exploration. What awaited her could reshape not only her own life but the lives of those who counted on her courage. Jack glanced back at her, eyes wide. "You might not be ready." But Sarah felt something shifting within her. She was more prepared than she ever thought possible. "No, it's time I started believing in myself," she replied resolutely, advancing toward the man, ready to face the unknown consequences that awaited. Could this man's tumultuous revelation lead her to the answers she desperately sought, or would it only shatter the path she attempted to forge? The truth loomed. Which would she choose to confront? The sharp-dressed man's eyes locked onto Sarah, his frantic energy pouring through the dimly lit cafe like a live wire. In that moment, she sensed not just the gravity of his words but also the weight of her own aspirations teetering on the brink of realization. As he began to explain the unexpected changes, Sarah's focus narrowed, shutting out the clamor of anxiety that had long plagued her thoughts. "I understand that this was an unexpected twist," he said, his voice trembling but commanding attention. "But I need someone with vision. Someone who's willing to take risks." His gaze scanned the room before resting on Sarah, practically fixating on her. She could feel Jack's presence behind her, tension radiating from him like heat from a furnace. His instinct had been to protect, yet here she stood, fueling the fire of possibility ignited within her. Risk, she thought, the word twisting in her mind like a double-edged sword. What if I'm not that person? Doubt whispered from the shadows of her mind. But as she held the man's gaze, another voice spoke louder, a resolute assertion of her emerging confidence. "I'll take the chance," Sarah declared, taking a step forward. The words spilled from her mouth as if they had been waiting a lifetime to escape. Each syllable brushed away the heavy doubts that loomed over her like storm clouds. Jack's expression shifted from concern to shock, and then back to a hardened resolve. "You don't truly know what you're getting into, Sarah," he insisted, stepping closer, attempting to draw her back from the precipice she seemed poised to leap from. "Maybe I do," she shot back, feeling a surge of defiance course through her. She recognized the limits of Jack's protection. He was guarding her from unknown dangers, but also inadvertently stifling her growth. It was a balance that felt precarious, yet necessary. The man watched their exchange, a faint flicker of intrigue crossing his features. Sarah sensed his encouragement buried beneath the chaos. "This isn't just about a job," he interjected. "It's about the trajectory of your career, about harnessing the potential you've been keeping under wraps." Her breath hitched momentarily at the weight of his statement. Career. Potential. The word sparked something deep within her, a latent drive to embrace her passions, her dreams, the very things she had relegated to the background while focusing on the practicality of motherhood. "Do you really think I can do this?" she asked, wrestling with the idea that her life could pivot on this moment. Voices in her head clamored, both taunting and cheering. "I see in you what others fail to recognize, raw talent," the man replied, earnestness shining in his eyes. "But talent without action is wasted. Will you step up, or will you let this moment slip through your fingers?" Everything in her tightened as the urgency of his challenge rolled over her like a tide. It seemed absurdly simple yet impossibly complicated. To act was to expose herself, to risk failure while also forging a path to potential success. She felt the familiar tendrils of fear creeping back in. What if she floundered? What if the challenges were insurmountable? "Your decision will influence everything," Jack murmured, a note of desperation lacing his voice. Fear and encouragement danced within him, each vying for dominance. But what if this was her moment? Sarah gathered her thoughts, piecing together the fragments of her identity that had been scattered over anxiety and doubt. "This is my life," she whispered to herself, unearthing a core of strength she hadn't known existed. "It's time I own it." With resolve solidifying in her chest, she looked back at the man. "I'm in. Tell me what I need to do." The man's expression brightened, a flicker of admiration igniting in his eyes. Then let us discuss next steps. But be warned, this path will demand everything you have. As she nodded, a sense of clarity washed over her. She was ready for the challenge that awaited. Though the weight of responsibility felt immense, it was balanced by the thrill of possibility. Yet, just as excitement began to settle in, Jack's hand landed on her shoulder, grounding her momentarily. "Sarah," he warned, but she brushed his touch away gently, more determined than ever to navigate this new direction. Suddenly, a ringing phone shattered the moment, and the man's expression morphed into serious concern. "I have to take this," he said, moving a few steps away while Sarah and Jack shared a tense silence filled with unspoken fears. "Are you really prepared for this?" Jack finally asked, his voice laced with both worry and admiration. "That's the question, isn't it?" She shot back, her heart racing. Within her, an electric buzz of potential formed. A personal revolution was underway, and she was at its helm. As the man returned, urgency etched onto his features, Sarah braced herself. Little did she know that the next moments would unwind threads of opportunity that would challenge her even further. "Things have shifted again," he said, noticeably shaken. "You might want to brace yourself for what's next." Her breath quickened as anticipation flooded her senses. What awaited this time? The unknown loomed like a dark specter overhead, inviting fear but promising a possibility that could redefine everything. The weight of the moment hung thick in the air as Sarah's heart raced. She could feel the electricity of change buzzing through her veins, but now, the sharp-dressed man's words carried an unsettling edge. Each revelation was a puzzle piece, and she felt both exhilarated and terrified at the prospect of putting them together. What does that mean? She managed through her swirling thoughts as she took a step toward the man. "It means that you'll need to be resilient," he said, his seriousness deepening. "A significant partnership opportunity has just become available. If you choose to accept, it comes with the kind of challenges that could reshape your entire career, but they come with risks. Are you ready for this?" The gravity of his question stung. She thought of her children, her responsibilities, the daily grind of managing their lives and her own underneath overwhelming pressure. Resilient, she mused. Could she embody that? She straightened her spine, drawing strength from the uncertainty that had long gnawed at her. That kind of growth will be mine, she thought, but I'll need to confront fears kicking at the door of my autonomy. Jack, behind her, shifted uneasily. "Do you even know what you're getting into?" he asked, frustration creeping into his tone. "This isn't just about the work, it could affect our entire lives." His concern weighed heavily, yet Sarah's determination began to crystallize. "I understand the risks," she asserted, her voice steady, "but I've been living in the shadows of my own fears for too long. I have to take a chance." The man tilted his head, assessing her, a surprise flickering across his eyes. "You have the fire. Whether you can channel it into action is what remains to be seen." She took a deep breath, the scent of coffee and worn wood mingling with her ambition. "What's the first step?" "First," he said, pulling a folded document from his pocket, "you'll need to sign this non-disclosure agreement. We're dealing with sensitive information. If you're in, it means keeping what you learn close to your chest." An agreement. Binding and legal. The weight of it should have frightened her, but instead, it fueled her resolve. "I can do that," she replied, her voice firm. The man unfolded it carefully, detailing expectations. With each line she read, another echo of a dream realized pulsed through her. Yet within the promise came whispers of doubt. She felt vulnerable, standing on the edge, knowing the leap was hers alone to take. "Is it really worth the risk?" Jack asked again, tension thickening the space between them. "You could lose everything, your routine, your balance, even time with the kids." Her heart clenched at the thought, but then she pictured a life scaled by larger dreams, her children witnessing her reinvention. "There's courage in uncertainty," she murmured. The question is, can I pull it off? A moment of silence enveloped them. Inside her, conflicting emotions battled, fear of failure and the pulse of newfound possibility simmered in her thoughts. Here's the thing, Sarah, the man interjected, disrupting her internal struggle. This project requires your unique vision, but it may also test your commitment and prioritization. You'll need to decide what you're willing to fight for. Fight for. The phrasing struck a chord. Everything she had worked to build, everything she had sacrificed, what had it been for, if not this very moment of choice? Her thoughts solidified around a singular truth: what she yearned for was more than complacency, it was the essence of living fully. Jack's concern shifted to admiration, a glimmer of respect in his eyes as he watched her wrestle with the decision. You really want this, don't you? I do. More than anything, Sarah stated, eyes ablaze with determination. The man slid the contract over to her, but before she could touch it, her phone buzzed in her pocket, a sharp reminder of her other life, one that collided irreparably with this new chapter. Excuse me, she said, pulling it out to check the caller ID. Her heart sank at the sight of her mother's name, a call she had been anxiously awaiting all week. This could be important, she said to Jack, torn between the world she was trying to step into and the responsibilities she would never forsake. As she glanced back at the man, the tension shifted back to uncertainty. Go ahead. Take the call, he urged. But remember, choices shape your path ahead. With her breath caught in her throat, Sarah hit the answer button, her heart simultaneously racing toward new horizons and bracing against the familiar pull of her old life. A collision was imminent, and she was right at the center. Hello? She answered. But just as her mother's voice chimed through the speaker, the sharp-dressed man's eyes darted to the door, a flash of panic crossing his face. Sorry, he interrupted her call suddenly. We might have a problem. The room pulsed with tension. What kind of problem could threaten everything she had just dared to pursue? Whatever it was, it felt like the tipping point of a storm. As Sarah managed to utter a cautious greeting, her mother's voice crackled through the phone. Sarah, it's urgent. We need to discuss your father's health. At that instant, the sharp-dressed man's expression became urgent, a cloud settling over the moment. We really need to leave. Now, he insisted, cutting through the ambient noise of her mother's worrying words. It was the first time she had seen him break his composure, and it sent an electric jolt down her spine. Mom, give me a second, she whispered, half focused on the man standing before her, his posture tense and alert. She wasn't typically one to prioritize work over family, but the stakes felt suddenly higher. Sarah, this is about your father. You need to come home. Time constricted as she weighed her trajectories, desperate to bridge the distance between her mother's worry and the risk of this bold opportunity. She heard her mother's words but felt another reality pulling at her, the allure of her ambition, the thrill of untested potential waiting just beyond her reach. Thank you, Mom, I'll be there, she finally responded, urgency threading through her tone. But as she hung up, her heart was split in two. Jack remained steadfast behind her, arms crossed in silent protest, while the sharp-dressed man sprung into action, gesturing toward the door. Come on, Sarah. Every minute counts. You need to see this. She was hesitant, caught between obligation and the blossoming promise of change. Yet, as she locked eyes with the man, she felt the gravity of her decision surging within her. If I walk away now, will I regret it forever? This nagging thought had crossed her mind 1,000 times, and every instinct screamed that she wouldn't be able to forgive herself. Before she could answer, he was already at the door, waiting expectantly. The crisp sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor, thrumming with urgency and anticipation. It was as if he held the key to a realm where everything she had ever hoped to achieve lay within grasp. Sarah, Jack's voice pierced through, taking her by surprise. Think about this. What about the kids? Your career can wait. What's more important to you? Everything is important. She snapped, the tension edging into frustration. But I can't let fear dictate my future. If I don't start fighting for it now, then when? Am I supposed to just put my dreams aside because it feels easier? Look, whatever this is, we need to talk, Jack pushed back, but it only fueled her resolve. With a deep breath, she turned back to the sharp-dressed man. I'm in. Let us go. The smile that played across his face illuminated the way forward, an unspoken agreement forming in the air around them. They stepped into the hallway, Jack's expression a mix of disappointment and worry, but Sarah chose to leave that behind. They swiftly moved through the building, the man's pace steady and sure, while Sarah's heart raced, caught in the whirlwind of newfound determination. Every footfall echoed her resolve, stirring hidden courage buried beneath layers of doubt. Suddenly, she saw the corridor leading toward a well-lit conference room that fluttered with life, a stark contrast to the heaviness she carried. "What's next?" she asked, her voice both steady and charged as they approached the door. "You'll meet key partners. But be prepared, they're a tough crowd," he warned, an edge of seriousness returning to his demeanor. Sarah's stomach nodded as they entered the room. 6 figures turned in her direction, all eyes scrutinizing her. A palpable tension filled the air, fraught with potential and unspoken expectations. "There she is," said a deep voice, breaking her moment of intimidation. A tall man in a tailored suit stepped forward, intrigue dancing in his eyes. "You're the one." For a heartbeat, Sarah felt the weight of the world upon her shoulders. The gravity of all that she had set in motion loomed large, settling in the pit of her stomach before she could collect her thoughts. "Now, Sarah," the sharp-dressed man's voice brought her back. "They want to know precisely what you bring to the table. You ready?" Ready? She thought fiercely. Was she? This was the moment that could define everything she had ever wanted. Would she falter, or seize her opportunity? With every breath crystallizing a blend of anxiety and exhilaration, Sarah summoned every ounce of courage within her. "Yes," she declared loudly, "I am ready." As the first question was posed, demanding all of her creativity and insight, she felt the familiar pulse of self-doubt threaten to spin her thoughts into chaos. But she pushed it away, for she was not just a mother or a caretaker, she was Sarah, a woman stepping forth into her power. And with her realization came a shift in the atmosphere, one that promised transformation, although shadows of uncertainty lingered in her peripheral vision. Before she could steady herself to answer the first inquiry, a new figure appeared in the doorway, and her gut twisted again, alarm bells blaring in her mind. Was this new player friend or foe? "Who are you?" the sharp-dressed man asked, but all Sarah felt was a sense of foreboding as the stranger's gaze locked on her. She knew in that moment that the game was far from over, and everything was on the line. The newcomer stepped further inside, the confidence exuding from him palpable. He wore a meticulously tailored navy suit that hugged his frame, contrasting sharply with the chaos of emotions swirling in Sarah's mind. His presence commanded the room, redirecting the momentum she had barely begun to gather. "Carl Mason," he introduced himself, his voice smooth yet laced with an edge that hinted at a deeper agenda. "I couldn't help but overhear that you're the talent everyone's been buzzing about." Her heart raced anew, his gaze bore into her, assessing, dissecting. Recognition flickered in the corner of her consciousness. Mason was a formidable name in the industry, known for ruthless ambition and crushing competition. But her internal alarms did not just signal dread, they prompted a fire in her spirit. "Sarah Green," she replied, forcing herself to appear calm as she steadied her breath. The tension shifted, forming an invisible thread that pulled her into this uncharted duel. This was no longer just about her professional aspirations, it was now a rare duel of wits, too. The sharp-dressed man, obviously caught off guard, glanced between them, his brows furrowing. "What are you doing here, Carl?" Carl smirked, feigning nonchalance. "Just wanted to see if the rumors of a promising new face were true. I can't resist a good challenge." His gaze flicked back to Sarah, whose resolve began to crystallize. Disappointment mixed with resolve swirled inside her. Why let unfamiliarity intimidate her further? The grit that had propelled her to fight for this opportunity swelled within her, and she could either yield to fear or embrace confrontation. Good to meet you, Carl. What do you think a promising face like mine brings to the table? She tilted her chin, embodying a confidence she sought to manifest. Carl's eyes narrowed slightly, impressed yet caught off guard. Spunk is a good start. But I'm looking for results, not bravado. There it was, the gauntlet thrown down. This was her moment, a test of her mettle against a man known for his cutthroat strategies. Did she have what it took to stand her ground? Then let us talk results. Sarah steadied her voice. I have a vision that combines innovative strategies with an understanding of consumer needs, not just profits. If you think I'm spunk without substance, you haven't seen what I can deliver. His demeanor shifted, intrigue weaving into his features. She could feel the gears turning in his mind. Was she a threat or an opportunity? This was a pivotal point, and it struck her. She was here not to prove herself to him, but to affirm her worth to herself. Interesting perspective, he mused. But vision alone doesn't execute. What's your plan? With this question hung in the air, a sense of current surged through Sarah. She realized that this was not merely about defending her position, it was about asserting her identity and proving to herself that she could compete. The words surged within her, detailed outlines of ideas she had nurtured before but hesitated to articulate. As she began to outline her strategies, engaging him with her insights into market dynamics and emerging technologies, she felt the atmosphere in the room shift, inching towards a new equilibrium. She was not a woman improvising her case, she was shaping the future. The sharp-dressed man remained silent, watching her transformation, and Sarah could sense a shift in his opinion. But Carl's gaze remained fixated on her, his interest piqued, as if he were weighing her potential against something bigger. Her elaborations wove a tapestry through the tension, igniting sparkles of fascination in the eyes of the other attendees. Yet, beyond the excitement of the moment, an undercurrent of anxiety fluttered in Sarah's chest. She was stepping into a realm rife with competition, and Carl was no ordinary opponent. What was the real price of success? And was she willing to fight against a powerhouse like him to achieve it? Just as she sensed the room warming to her ideas, Carl leaned in, his expression darkening slightly. Impressive. But let's cut to the chase. What if it means stepping on those familiar to you in the quest for success? The question hung heavy, knotting her insides. Torn between ambition and ethics, she was faced with the very crux of her moral compass. Stepping on others for her growth, was it worth it? She could feel her breathing deepen as she prepared to tackle the implications of his proposition. Would she craft her ascent at the expense of her principles? Caught in the visceral confrontation between aspiration and integrity, Sarah stood at a crossroads, the weight of her choices pressing upon her shoulders. The figure of Jack and her responsibility as a mother loomed in her memory, ready to clash with her newly ignited determination. And beneath the pressure, a thought crystallized. What if her strength were not just to rise, but to uplift as she ascended? Let us talk ethical competition then, she replied with a firm voice. If we're truly aiming for success, there's no reason we can't rise together. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, she became more than an aspiring professional, she became a contender, ready to battle not for victory alone, but for her values. But as discussions intensified, Carl's gaze bore into her, casting a shadow over her aspirations. What game was he playing? She couldn't shake the feeling that his intentions were more insidious than mere competition. As the room buzzed with chatter and exchanged ideas, she believed she was forging alliances, yet the question loomed: was she stepping into cooperation or a trap woven out of deceit? The stakes were higher than she could have anticipated, and no matter how calculated her next steps were, she could sense the danger of the path ahead. What was her next strategic move? Would it fortify her foundations or dismantle everything she held dear? The energy in the room pulsed, mingling the scent of fresh ambition and underlying treachery. Sarah's heart thudded, quickening as she prepared to navigate this minefield. Carl's challenge lingered, stepping on others to ascend. It was a dangerous proposition, one that tested the very essence of who she was. "What if we rise together?" she had offered, the words escaping her lips almost instinctively. Yet, in that bold declaration lurked a question: was she truly prepared to uphold this vision, considering her past? The memory of Jack's warm smile and the responsibilities she bore weighed heavily. There was more at stake than her aspirations. Carl's silence was unsettling, a space filled with tension where his thoughts leaned toward strategy rather than empathy. Could he sense her hesitation? Was he calculating his next move? She couldn't afford to be merely reactive anymore. The time had come for proactive decision-making. "Collaboration sounds nice in theory," he said at last, a hint of incredulity in his tone. "But let's face it. It's a dog-eat-dog world. Good intentions won't get you to the top." With that, he leaned back, giving off an air of relaxed confidence that belied the sharpness of his mind. Maybe he was right. The harsh reality of the industry was peppered with harsh truths, and she had witnessed firsthand how kindness could be mistaken for weakness. Yet, could success born from betrayal ever lead to lasting fulfillment? She shuddered internally at the thought of forsaking her values, the thought of losing Jack's image to the ugly truths of ambition. But a flicker of rebellious determination ignited within her. "Integrity goes a long way, Carl. The world may be ruthless, but it's also watching. People are hungry for authenticity. Perhaps it's time we disrupt standard practices, not just for our gain but for the growth of the industry." His expression shifted slightly, as if she had finally piqued his interest. The slight raising of an eyebrow suggested that her words had not fallen on deaf ears. In that moment, she realized she wasn't just hoping for acceptance. She was laying down a challenge of her own, capturing her audience's attention while simultaneously questioning Carl's motives. "Disruption isn't merely about what people want, it's about what they need," he replied, locking eyes with her. "What makes your proposition viable in a world driven by profit?" It was an asserted position, one that swung the pendulum of power momentarily back to him. Sarah felt the pressure swell within her. Rejecting the fear threatening to engulf her, she took a breath of conviction and leaned forward, her voice steady and imbued with purpose. "Consumers today seek brands that resonate with their values. They want missions over margins. My plan embraces that notion." The words flowed freely now, fueled by the realization that passion could indeed be her most formidable weapon. Let's revisit the notion of cooperation. Imagine if we reformed our tactics to reflect transparency. What impact would that have in the long run? By embracing shared growth, we not only uplift ourselves but redefine what it means to be leaders in this industry. Carl's skepticism cracked, revealing curiosity. "And what does that look like in a practical sense?" The series of ideas unfurled in her mind like a tapestry, each one representing the potential of collaboration over competition. Her own hesitations evaporated as she painted a vivid picture of her vision: the strategies of accountability, innovative products tailored with clarity and purpose, and her commitment to not just elevate herself but foster growth among peers. As the words spilled from her mouth, she felt liberation wash over her. In laying her ideas bare for scrutiny, she was not just claiming a foothold in this industry, but asserting a part of herself that had long felt suppressed. The grassroots of her journey converged into this definitive moment. A flash of understanding transformed her fear into confidence. Carl shifted, his gaze contemplating her proposition. The flickers of doubt that had etched their way across his sharp features began to dissolve, replaced by something resembling intrigue. Yet the battle was far from settled. She could feel the eyes of the attendees, their curiosity tangible. They were not passive observers, they were her allies in this moment, and she had unwittingly woven them into her story, directing their collective focus toward the ideal of ethical leadership. "What I propose can revolutionize how we relate to our industry and our customers," she continued, heart pounding but steadier now. "It may seem risky, but isn't true progress always born of bold moves?" Carl studied her intensely. She realized that she had crossed into risky territory. Now she was playing not just for attention but for outright persuasion, the foundation of her value system on display. Just as she felt a shift towards acceptance, he raised an eyebrow in challenge, ready for the next volley. "And suppose I'm not convinced? What then?" A moment's silence enveloped them, crackling with tension. Sarah could feel the weight of her next words steeped in significance. She was not just deciding her professional future, but carving an impression of her integrity into this moment. She took a breath, every part of her grounding itself in that commitment. "Then I will stand firm in my vision, even if it means losing this opportunity," she stated, unwavering. As she spoke, a realization coursed through her. In asserting her values, she wasn't merely fighting Carl's scrutiny. She was confronting herself, her fears, her past choices, and the ghost of Jack's memory lingering in the background. The stakes had risen exponentially, yet she felt a tremor of strength surging through her, bearing her soul like never before. But as she prepared for Carl's next move, an unsettling thought flickered in her consciousness. Would challenging him bring her the acceptance she craved, or would it ultimately set her on a solitary path? The encounter was morphing into a defining moment, a high-stakes game of wits and principles. The tension thickened, inviting an inevitable confrontation that loomed just beneath the surface. What would this pivotal exchange demand of her next? And in facing Carl, what revelations lay hidden within her own aspirations, just waiting to be unearthed? As Sarah grappled with her conviction, the gravity of her stance resonated in the air around her. The energy crackled with potential. She had risen, not only to defend her values but to assert the woman she had become: a mother, a dreamer, and a contender ready to face challenges head-on. Carl crossed his arms, a commanding figure who, despite his earlier confidence, seemed intrigued by her resolve. "You claim to champion authenticity, yet the industry hardly rewards integrity. You must know that." His words dripped with skepticism, challenging her to justify her ambitions and prove that she was not just another dreamer. "Maybe it's time for a shift," Sarah replied, her voice thick with conviction. "We can redefine what success looks like, not merely profitability but genuine connections and trust. Imagine a world where we're known for our integrity as much as our success." She felt the atmosphere slowly warming as she spoke, the scattered attendees shifting in their chairs, leaning into her vision. This would be her stage, not a mere pitch but a declaration of a new frontier. Consumers care about more than products, they want to be part of something genuine. "My plan melds data-driven insights with heartfelt storytelling, marking the distinction we need in the marketplace." She noticed a few nods among the audience, an affirmation that perhaps they too craved a different narrative. "We can achieve sustainable growth by embarking on this journey together, not through cutthroat maneuvers but through partnerships that harness each other's strengths." Carl's expression softened, the arrogance that had previously darkened his demeanor began to dissipate. "And what about your responsibilities?" he asked, tilting his head, his curiosity piqued. "Are you willing to sacrifice everything for this vision?" At that moment, doubt began to seep back in, the memories of late nights and early mornings pushing Lily's stroller swirled in her mind. Jack and the sacrifices she made started whispering through the recesses of her heart. But she quickly quelled those thoughts. She had wrestled with her identity long enough. "This vision is not a sacrifice. It embodies the life I want for my daughter, a life filled with not just survival but fulfillment." Her words rang with authenticity, echoing them into the core of her being. "If I can model ambition and integrity, I'm setting the stage for her to chase her own dreams. I want to be able to tell her that she can aspire to greatness without betraying her core principles." The tension in the room shifted transformationally, a foundational energy surging as attendees seemed to rally behind her words. A part of her had longed for this affirmation. She wasn't just altering her career, she was reshaping her narrative. Carl leaned closer, and for the first time, genuine interest flickered in his eyes. "Okay, let us say I'm intrigued, but how will we even begin to initiate this revolution?" Her heart raced with the exhilaration of possibility. Each breath deepened her conviction. We start small, she said, formulating her strategy on her feet. We connect with customers not just about products but about causes. Partnering with local communities creates a platform where their struggles fuel our innovation. From there, we measure results. The authentic story becomes our selling point, something consumers will connect with, something that lasts. Behind her, she caught the sharp-dressed man sharing a look of approval with another attendee, the first signals of mutual respect sparking in the room. "All right, let us say I consider this," Carl replied, the challenge dissipating from his demeanor. "What are you proposing as our first actionable step?" Footsteps echoed in her mind, a cacophony of doubts entwined in memories of nurturing Lily, working long hours, and yearning for dreams. "No more. We gather focus groups, connecting with our community to understand their needs. These insights will directly inform product development." With each word, she could feel the energy solidifying, a unity forming around an idea that was more than personal, a commitment to operate with purpose. The dialogue became tangible, reflective of her growth, a young woman, a mother, shedding fears as she stepped into an undiscovered competence. As she found her voice, other attendees began discussing her ideas, the interest visible, and then came the pivotal moment. Carl straightened, a renewed alignment aligning with her vision. "Let us test this strategy, then. I'm willing to explore this, but with one caveat." "Name it," she replied, having come this far, eager for the opportunity. "We need to be held accountable for these goals. If we're going to step out of the conventional molds of this industry, we need a clear measure of success." "I'm unwilling to abandon the hard metrics," he asserted, as though her vision had transformed from mere audacity to pragmatic ambition. "Agreed," she said, a smile of exhilaration blossoming. "Accountability breeds trust. Through transparent measures, both profit and principle can coexist." The shift was palpable, as mutual respect settled over the room while ideas coursed through the air smoothly, each participant lifted by an electric potential that felt alive. The sharp-dressed man again gestured toward Sarah, and she felt his encouragement flow through her. "And you need a solid plan to present to our investors," he stated firmly. "This isn't just a conversation. It's time to put actions alongside words." "Absolutely," Sarah replied, feeling the weight of affirmation in the room. She was ready, transformed from a hesitant dreamer into an empowered strategist prepared to take on the competitive landscape. The meeting wound down with palpable energy, conversations buzzing about her vision, igniting sparks of collaboration while she stood, having conquered more than she ever imagined. As voices washed over her, she felt Jack's presence, and glimmers of recognition settled within her. She was an architect of her future. In the backstage of her heart, she realized how far she had come, facing her fears and turning doubts into actionable aspirations. With every person she connected with, she dismantled the barriers that had hidden her truth. As the meeting concluded, an urgency swelled in her chest, a signal of readiness soaring through her. She knew she had engaged in a duel, and she emerged victorious, not just in pursuit of ambition but in owning her identity, the balance of motherhood and professional aspiration flourishing. They entered the world, nested together at the intersection of dreams and courage. With a final glance at Carl, she read the intricate dance of challenge and collaboration in his expression. The thrill of opportunity enveloped her, and as she stepped out into the sunlight, her phone buzzed, the message from Lily ringing clear in her mind. She would embrace her journey, and her next adventure was already outlined. Little did she know, the challenges ahead would carve her path to success, affirming herself as the architect of her living legacy. This was her moment of transformation, a crystallization of passion into purpose, a journey that solidified her role as a mother, dreamer, and now a leader ready to flourish. As Sarah stepped forward into her future, she felt light and undeniably strong, a woman ready to navigate the waves ahead. Now, it's your turn to take action. Don't just be a spectator in your life, be the change. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that could ignite your own transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show that you believe in the power of perseverance. Comment your reactions and theories about today's gripping ending. Share instantly this message with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion and embark on their journey towards achievement. This is the moment to show your support, and together, let us shape the narratives of our lives.